what does success look like to me? What am I driving towards? And those things are very personal. It's amazing what you can accomplish when there's trust in the room. And when you remove that trust, it's remarkable how inefficient you can become.
And when you've got guys around you who are buying into your vision and pushing towards the same thing, it's energizing.
All right. Well, welcome to the Forge Contractor Alliance podcast. It's Josh and Kenton here with you again. And I want to take you back to 1990. I'm pulling out some stories from my youth.
And I was 2 years old.
Yeah, when you were two and I was 17. It was the end of August, and my brother was 15 at the time. We found ourselves in a tomato field in the Okanagan. And we're in this field and we're picking tomatoes, and it was not our intention to become tomato pickers, but the thing was that we were on a bicycle trip. We were cycling for a couple of weeks after my parents went to Europe, and we were living in Europe at the time, but we were back in Canada for the summer. And so my kid brother, 15 years old, and I'm 17, I tell my parents, I sell the trip to them. I'm like, man, we want to just go and bike and see where the wind blows us. And so we were probably about 1,000 K in at this time, and I was running out of cash. And so found a job with a farmer picking tomatoes, and we were picking for one afternoon, and we picked hard. And and I found out, like, tomatoes kind of the bottom end of fruit picking. Like grapes you can stand and pick at your waist, and like some of them, and just the way the dollars go and how finicky the buyers of tomatoes are, it's like the bottom end, because it's just, you can't get a lot of volume. It's hard on your back, and when the weather isn't good, it isn't great. And so we went to bed that night in our tent, which we were carrying with us on our trip. And the next morning it's raining, like just raining. But we were like, hey man, we're here to pick. And so we get up and we go to the foreman. We're like, all right, where do we start? He looks at us. He goes, you're going to pick in this? We're like, well, we're here to pick. He goes, nobody picks in this, but sure, we'll set you up. So they're like all gung-ho. We're picking for a couple hours, and my brother all of a sudden just starts tossing tomatoes at me. And I'm like, what's going on, man? He's like, dude, you may need money. I do not. He says, this is horrible. He says, let's get out of here. And so we hit the road. And we went and we told the foreman that we're quitting, and he was like devastated. He was like, oh man, here you were the only guys picking in the rain. We thought we had winners. Interestingly, the reason that we were even there at all was because I have been, throughout my life, and this was kind of at the beginning of it, really poor with cash flow. I needed the money. We were living on peanut butter sandwiches. We tried to live on $10 Canadian a day for any kind of tenting that we had to do, and food. So we would buy like just the cheapest food. We take loaves of bread, just the cheapest bread, and squish it down into our panniers, and then just like munch it in there with a jug of peanut butter and a few cans of beans.
And then calories per square inch.
As many as we could. And then we open it up and like rip open the bread and try to get it to look like bread again. And
let the air come back.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's like my brother didn't need to live like that, because even though he was only 15, he was well cashed up. He knew how to hold his cash. I had no idea. And so I was like living off of him. Because I'm like, well, okay, we can go, but I'm going to have to borrow money from you. He's like, whatever we got to do. Like, let's just go. and so it makes me think about what a big deal cash flow is, and how many times in our lives as businessmen, we change what we do or what we're thinking about or what our focus is because of where our cash flow is at. And I personally believe that cash flow, as far as some of the hard details of small business, I think cash flow is probably, and I'm not talking about like the characteristic things, like the principles. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the hard things that you've got to keep your eye on as a small business owner. I think that cash flow is probably, if not number one, I'd have to be convinced that there's other things more important.
Yeah. It's kind of funny actually, because the topic that I wanted to go over with you, and that we will be talking about in the future, around stewardship. There was an element of that I wanted to bring up specifically in stewarding and finance as well.
Hmm.
So it's Because that almost sounds like exactly like cash flow can mean a lot of things, like amount of revenue and collections in compared to cash out.
Yes.
But ultimately, one of the things I've noticed myself is I can work my butt off. I can do all the jobs. I can bring in all the cash. But if you don't steward that cash well,
Yeah.
it just disappears.
Oh man, does it ever.
And like the most freakish way too.
Oh yeah.
I deal with this in my personal life as well as company. It's
Yes.
like, it's something I've learned that you have to be super intentional on what you're doing with your cash flow. You're bringing your cash in and you got to steward that well, or else the next thing you know, it's just gone.
It is. I think that entrepreneurial type people, as a rule, tend to be poor with cash flow. Like if you're not entrepreneurial, if you're more like, or a less of a risk taker, let's say, and I'm not saying that all entrepreneurs are risk takers, but there tends to be a correlation. Like if you're a risk taker, entrepreneuring comes more naturally often. And which is why often when I see like a guy with a lot of high risk tolerance partner with someone who has very low risk tolerance, I often see if they can make that work, it can be extremely strong.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that the first 6 years that I ran business with my brother being my working partner. And that was a wonderful combination because he was very conservative in the way that he would approach things. And I was very like, hey, let's just throw our hat in and see what happens. And it's a good combination. But I see cash flow. And when I was thinking about this, I'm thinking that it's like the water line on a river. It's like the standard water line on a river. And when you're looking at a river, you can see like, and up here in the north in particular, our water volume really varies a lot. And I think in most places in the world, it does to some extent. Here it does a lot because in the spring we get our runoff and the mountains start to melt. The ice caps start to melt in the spring. And that just funnels all its way down. And it always amazes me. The ecosystem is unbelievable. It amazes me just how much water can accumulate so quickly. I do quite a bit of backcountry hiking and you see like these really robust streams, like right below the peak of the mountain. I'm like, how does that even happen? Like it's just there. But then as it comes down the mountains, it funnels into larger and larger and larger, streams and then rivers. And until you get to where our town is sitting on one of the major rivers of Western Canada, which is the Fraser, which is like a huge thing. But what you see is that there's a standard place where it sits, but at different points of the season, it'll either be above that, which can be dangerous, or below that, which also can be dangerous just from a water supply standpoint.
Yeah.
And so, but regardless of the extremes, there's the standard. And I think that when you look at your company as a small business person in particular, you will have a standard that you're used to. And the standard may or may not be healthy. And when I'm dealing with a small business person that has good cash flow, it's always an easier conversation. And I kind of intuitively know when I'm dealing with that person, just the way that they act and communicate and the way that they treat the people around them. There's less desperation. You can just sense it. It's something where there's just a little bit different posture. And sometimes it's just dumb luck. Like sometimes people come into business with whatever, a major inheritance or good money from a previous job or a spouse that literally will have a really, really good, and I'm not saying that's dumb luck, but I'm just saying like a spouse that has really high income. Like I have buddies who run contracting companies whose wives are doctors and they typically tend not to worry about cash flow the same way.
But even those alternative, like those people have handled their cash flow well to, like, I would actually argue if you're good at handling cash flow personally or as a company, then that's not just luck. There's got to be an element of intention there to
maintain it.
Yeah.
To maintain it there's nothing to do with luck in my opinion. But some people just end up coming into companies with more money. So I'm just talking about like at the outset, or some people just raise capital and are really good at it and understand the need of it. But others come in, like I think both you and I, with pretty much zero capital.
Nothing. Both of us started with nothing.
Yeah, with like literally this job will now facilitate the next job.
Yeah. And
that's just how both of us started.
And I'm going to grow through buying tools and using profits from my work day to day to help.
Absolutely. And literally only as needed. Because I can remember going through, so many different, like, do I need this tool? Like, yes, I would like it, but do I need it?
Do I need to eat tonight, or do I get the new tool?
Yeah, it's true.
There was a phase of that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Hey, I remember there was a point at which I had, when I was in the beginning of my second season, I did not have the money at the beginning of the season to insure my truck. And I remember walking down the road with my ladder on my shoulder. I'll never forget this, man. Walking a number of miles to, fortunately, the job was in the heart and I lived in the heart. So the same kind of basic area of town. I just remember spending the morning walking to my job. I got up early, set up my ladder, started working so that I could just get the money to insure my truck. It's pretty intense.
That's crazy. I haven't had it that extreme.
I think that what happened to me is that from a very early standpoint, I got used to a very tight cash flow. And I'm not proud of that. And I don't think that there's I'm just trying to be transparent. Like, I just think I got used to something that was not healthy. And I think that my Waterline, when it came to cash flow, was just never great. And the interesting thing about that, and until I really started to pay attention to it, but that took many, many, many years, like way more years than I'm comfortable even saying, a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I think that, because for me, as an entrepreneur, I always saw that if I had excess cash, it allowed me to expand in some way, to stretch in some way, to leverage something. And so to actually have cash in the bank just felt like a waste to me.
Yeah.
It felt like this is just dead money, which is really, really wrong. Like, it's just wrong. And I mean, I had lived in a home where we valued experience and the stuff that we were meant to do in life over accumulating cash. So growing up, I experienced, like, we lived paycheck to paycheck. We lived extremely amazing life, but it wasn't like we ever accumulated cash. And I knew that. So to me, it was very normal to have, like, to basically be like, okay, I got to complete this job in order to pay those bills.
Yeah. This is actually super interesting timing, because I started reading a book this week that talks about this exact thing.
What book are you reading?
It's called The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
I don't think I have.
But exactly what you're describing right now, he calls it your money blueprint, or your financial, it's something blueprint that you have.
Yeah.
And you learned it from your parents, your life experiences, and through traumas or whatever.
Yeah.
But the theory is, and he swears by this, and I'm only pretty early into it, but whatever cash flow, and the book's entirely on money and riches and all that.
Yeah, sure.
But whatever cash flow you were raised in and you have a belief in, no matter what amount of money you make past that, you will always reset to that original blueprint until you intentionally change it.
Right.
Which I found, actually, some of the examples he was giving, I related to directly. I was like, I've actually noticed myself doing that exact. You almost subconsciously sabotage yourself. And you reset back to that original blueprint.
For sure.
And you don't even recognize you're doing it until you intentionally change the blueprint in your mind. And he was giving examples of guys who were making $800,000 a year who were worth negative $500,000.
Yes.
They could not.
Yes.
Like, the income, the cash flow was really strong.
Yeah.
But they didn't steward it well, and they had a blueprint in their mind that kept forcing them to be in debt. And there were traumas of their childhood and stuff where subconsciously it was ingrained into them that they didn't believe that wealth was good, or heavy cash flow was a positive thing, and they were doing things, they were making bad investments, they were wasteful with their money, and they would always reset. No matter how much money they made, they would always reset to what their original blueprint was. It was a really interesting, I'm not saying it's right. I think there's a certain amount of truth to it.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, because a lot of it I did find really relatable. And when we're talking about cash flow, I think one of the main things, like, your overall mindset towards money is a big factor. Like, obviously your mindset towards anything in business is one of the main factors, but having that intentional blueprint of, how am I going to steward my finances? How am I, like, and again, having goals and vision and things that you're working towards, so that you're constantly taking your cash flow and being intentional with it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just And this is something I'm looking at myself right now. And I'm
Oh,
like,
man.
holy cow,
Yeah.
I could do such a better job at this.
Well, this is an uncomfortable conversation because this is not a strong suit for either you or me.
No, it's
Like
not.
this is so this
We
is
recognize
this is uncomfortable, and I sometimes blame myself partially for the fact that you struggled with it, and because I feel like at the very least I've set an example of being like, this is okay, like this is not something to be corrected, and I'm not sure that it's ever been something that I've encouraged verbally, but I think just through just the way that we operate, it's like being highly stretched on a cash flow basis is just pretty normal.
Yeah.
And it's not something like, if we talk about it, it's not like we talk about it to change it. We just be like, yeah, this is like where we're at.
But I feel like we justify it because we're a
Absolutely.
seasonal company.
Absolutely.
Or we're like, oh, it's just
Yeah.
part of the bit. But
Yeah.
in all reality, it doesn't have to be that way.
Bunk, actually.
Yeah.
And it's
It
really
shouldn't be that way.
it's excuses. Like I really, when I started to think about this, and yeah, it is difficult to talk about in some regards, because when you circle around to the same problem for more than a decade, like how did one preacher I heard, when you have a recurring problem like this, don't pray for a miracle, pray for discipline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because if you pray for a miracle, all that's going to happen is that it'll save you from one pinch and you'll just dive straight into the next. But you need a different style of discipline. You need something that will kick you out of, a cycle. And I think that for me, what I can tell you for sure, and I'll use an example of when I was in Edmonton and I was studying there, and I was working on the side as a sub, and there was one contractor that I worked for, and his name was Tom, and that's probably doesn't give us much specifics, but this dude was a general. He built, I think, like 4 houses a year, something like that. But everybody loved working for Tom, like loved it. He was the kind of guy that on every house that he did, he would do something small. He would get to know his customer because he was building custom homes, and they weren't like high end. They were more like middle end custom homes. He would always get 1 or 2 of his sub trades to do something uniquely special for his customer that they didn't ask for. Like he would detail a ceiling if he felt like that would be like, he'd put some kind of like extra detail into a ceiling, or he would do like something that was just like definitely noticeable. He was that kind of a guy. But what was interesting about him, and I talked with him at length about this, is that his key to building better houses than his competitors was to pay his sub trades immediately. And as soon as if I would give him a bill, he would literally go to his truck and cut me a check.
Wow.
Every time.
Never heard of that before.
And if you think about this, it's like, it's absolutely, I actually have a contractor right now that's the same way.
Really?
My buddy, like if I present him a check today, an invoice today, if I don't have a check tomorrow, it's weird. And that's just, he might be out of town or whatever, but like that is his practice. And you can only do this, I have to say, if you have good cash flow.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have good cash flow, that is not an option. But what you win by this is unique, because he told me, he said, if a sub trade is squashed for time between him and a different general, and they have tight cash flow, guess who they're going to go work for?
Yeah.
It's not a question. You're going to go work for Tom.
Yeah.
Because you know that when you're done with Tom, you're going to have the money to pay your payroll. Whereas with the other guy, you're going to be waiting 30 days. Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong to wait 30 days if that's your terms to pay your subs. I'm not saying that there's anything evil about that even. I mean, if your terms are clear and you're honest and you pay at 30 days, then, and often people do that to manage their cash flow. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm saying the potential to build something stronger when you have strong cash flow is pretty intense.
Yeah.
And I love you working for the dude. Like I loved it because, and it's not that, I mean, my wife and I were both studying at that time. And so any money that we made was needed. And so to know that I was getting paid right away, it gave me joy actually. Like you just giver, you get through to the end, and we're project oriented to begin with. And part of the incentive is that you're getting paid. I mean, that's the reason we do it at the end of the day.
There's something so nice that's just about being paid right away, even for a residential customer. Though.
Oh yeah.
Like when I finish a job and they're like, "Oh, can I cut you a check now?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yes, please."
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's just nice.
Now I don't have my admin chasing you down. The money's right in the bank, and you pay everybody in good time, and it's just,
it's nice.
It is. It's
nice.
nice.
Conversely, if you have to go and chase your cash from someone, like there is this thing that happens inside of you. Number one, it makes you, even though you've earned the money, it makes you feel like a beggar.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever felt that, but to me it does. It's kind of like, I feel like at a certain, like if there's resistance to being paid, then all of a sudden you feel like now I'm like sitting here groveling for something that,
We agreed on.
yeah. So that's hard. Number two, you're just not sure about, like, and if it's a really big job, it can make a, like for a small company, if you're doing a job that sometimes we get a job that will be what, maybe 1/20th of our season, like the biggest of the jobs that we have, maybe will be like 1/20th. And in my case, because my company's smaller than yours, it can be like 1/4 of my season. And so if there's an issue with payment with something like that, oh dude, that's
That's rough.
and so, but conversely, if I'm not consistent in paying my suppliers, they're not going to jump for me the same way. Like there's just all kinds of like ramifications around cash flow that as I think about it, man, it's intense.
Taking it a step further, there's builders that we've done work for this year that they could offer us the moon and the stars, and we'll be like, no, we're not working for you again.
Yeah,
because they're literally used this from the get go. They use this to finance their build.
Totally.
We're in communication with the sub trade.
Yeah,
it was like over 90 days to get paid anything.
Yeah,
and this is a job we did back in March.
Yeah,
and we're still not paid out. And they literally told us, "Oh, we're not paying out the holdbacks until our holdbacks are paid back." So we're like, "Okay, so you were literally using your sub trades, and nothing gets under my skin more."
It's wrong
with builders, and that's commercial level, but it's still wrong.
It's wrong.
You pay your sub trades.
Yeah.
If you're not backboned enough to and positioned and postured to finance these projects properly, don't do them.
Yeah.
Don't lean on your sub trades to finance your builds.
Totally.
Drives me nuts.
Totally. And it's not fair.
Ranting now.
No, but it's true. And so I think, like, when I look in the mirror about this, I've been in a transition over the last few years. And it's like, and I'm like, I guess beyond midlife at this point. But for myself, typically having low cash flow is not something that I tried to correct. It's just something that I've accepted. And I would stretch myself in various ways. And typically my investment comes through forced investment. Like real estate's a good investment for me because you have to pay, like you have to take care of that in order for it to grow. And so that's always worked for me. And so it will take away from my cash flow, and it has to happen. And it'll keep my cash flow low because I'll extend myself in the stuff that I buy to the place where my cash flow is still a struggle, but I'm like, it's okay because, my net worth is fine.
Yeah.
But net worth and cash flow are two different things. And I would argue that net worth affects your day-to-day sanity much less than cash flow. I think cash flow is probably, in my life, been my biggest stress.
Me too.
And I think that is a funny thing to look at and think, man, I've been that stressed. And the difference, and I guess this is the thing that I've been wrestling through. And if you're a small business owner that hasn't thought about this, maybe you're just naturally good at it, which I would not call lucky. I would just say it's brilliant.
Yeah.
But I think many, many, many small business people struggle with this. And the difference between having a standard waterline here versus here, it's not actually in the operations. It's a matter of getting to this and then making this the normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, once you're at that point, it's the same as here. It's like your income can be the same. Your expenses can be the same. Everything can be the same. You've just made a jump to a different waterline. And when that waterline is higher and healthier, then everything is just less stressful.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what's the number one, if there was something, advice you've been given or anything that you feel like you ignored that's caused cash flow to be a strain on you, what would you say it is?
I think that there's a combination of things. And I think that what you were saying earlier about the book that you've been reading is there's some good food for thought there. I think there's a combination of things that when you're young, you just get used to.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things is interesting because I'm like a massive believer in the power of story. And I love the fact that Christ in scripture used story all the time. And the parables like really speak to me. And this parable of the talents talks about a guy that buried his money in the ground.
Yeah.
And that was seen as being like horrible because he wasn't using it to grow.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I think that in my junior, less mature mind, there was something about that just said, like, don't have any reserves. Like, take what you have and throw it into investment.
Ooh.
And I know.
Interesting.
I know. It's not right, but it's a misinterpretation from when I was young. And I think I just heard it that way. And like, man, I'm not going to be that guy that doesn't do stuff with my money. Like when it comes in, I'll put it to work.
Would you actually argue that the way you have handled your cash flow, you've become the one who's buried
Well,
their talent?
hmm.
Because I would argue I have.
At times in my life, I have. And I think I'm not blaming my handling of cash flow on that alone, but I think it's subtle things like that. I think it's the fact that we as a family didn't prioritize financial wealth, and I think in many ways we saw it as being a negative as far as not pursuing. Like my parents were missionaries, and so for them, if they were focused on finances, they couldn't do what they were meant to do with the right character, with the right attitude. And so that's part of it for me, I think, is that I learned that it's just like you can get by, and it's cool. And there's something beautiful about not being tethered to your financial status to the place where that dictates everything about who you are.
In fact, that's important. Like, because when people tether themselves too much to hoarding cash, that's just as bad.
And this is actually a really good point.
All the time.
I'm not friends with those people.
Yeah.
Like I typically walk away from people who hoard cash and where it's all about just making whatever lump sum they have grow.
Yeah.
I'm not against that process, but if that's their main focus in life, I find that I cannot spend a lot of time with them because to me, there's just the focus just seems really shallow and not wholesome.
Well, those people to me, like, you're cheap. Like those, we're talking people who are
that way,
are super cheap.
It feels that way.
And what my experience,
and this sounds judgmental, and it probably is what we're saying right now. But it's an issue.
It's real. But like my experience with those people is they value their own money and bank account over other relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as soon as I get that feeling like, oh, you're putting your dollar signs over me, I think that's why we're not typically friends with those types of people, is because like even though we're not attached to cash and it can be a bad thing, like you're saying, because like there's a freedom in that, and there's a good component to it, but it's just because we're not stewarding things well, we're too far at once. It's like politics.
Yeah, sure.
You can have the super cheap guy and you can have the super don't care about money guy.
Yeah.
And we tend to be more over
on that side.
Where just like everything, there's a balance in the middle.
Ish.
Where you want to be stewarding your finances well, paying attention, managing your cash flow.
Yes.
But you don't want to be a stingy, cheap boss or dad or or whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
And you also don't want to be someone who's just pissing their money away.
Yes. So and I think that's exactly right. And I think that's a good framework because there are these extremes. And if you're going to err, in my opinion, err on the side of relationship versus money.
Agreed.
Like if you're going to err. And so I think that we've walked that line. And it's probably part of the reason why we've been good friends for a long time. Is like we see eye to eye on that. It's like, do we need to do this? And I always laugh because in our negotiations, we're always negotiating for the other person. Like we've always done that. We've collaborated on a lot of stuff. And people say, well, how do you come to an agreement? I said, well, we sometimes battle it out. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, because I think he should take more. He thinks I should take more. And that's the way it's been, like literally our whole relationship. And so, I mean, I think that, I guess the place that I'm at right now with where I'm at, just in my age, the amount of experience I have, and just recognizing how many times I've gone around this circle.
Yeah.
I've come to this place where I just recognize how much I value business people that have this piece figured out. Yeah. I value it. And there is a way, and I can tell you, like, and Tom, I'm using as an example because you could just sense it in the way he handled people. There was a quiet confidence. He knew that he understood the power of what he was doing. And he did it with, he built relationship at the same time. Like he was using his cash flow as a way, as a form of goodwill.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, and my buddy now in town here that operates the same way. I have no idea like what his actual income is, but I know that the way he manages his cash is very responsible.
Hmm.
And I don't think that his income, like I think you're right in saying like you can have an incredible amount of income and still have an awful cash flow.
Yep.
Like it really is not reliant on income. But I do think that there's a mindset and a shift that has to happen for health to be in that area. And I'm really working it through.
Yeah.
Like I'm really taking myself to task these days.
It's funny timing. There's a reason I'm reading that book is because I am doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I recognize it as a big gap in not just my business, but my personal life too.
Sure.
And it's been pointed out to me a few times what the one tool is that I have a really bad mindset towards, and it's budgets.
Right.
When people mention budgets to me,
dude.
I hate budgets. I hate budgeting, and I know that's wrong. And I know, and our good friend Chris, who's going to be on the podcast here soon, he's always telling me, he's like, man, have you taken that back to a budget? And I have this weird association with budgets where it's like, if I'm budgeting something with my business, I'm just limiting, like, I want the freedom to be able to pivot, move, invest in that, do this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
And a budget to me
is restrictive.
It feels restrictive. And I'm like, and I think part of the problem is I see people who just live by a budget, and I see it restricting their personal lives or their businesses. I'm like, I never want that. I need the freedom to be able to move, but I also recognize the fact that because I have such a bad mindset towards budgets, it's caused us a huge amount of grief in my company.
I mean, we live out in nature. Yesterday, I was on Klukas, actually, on the lake that you live on, yesterday working. And the 2 days before were the best days that you can possibly imagine. Like it was like the fall up here in the north, man, when there's no wind and the sun's out. Oh man, it's literally heavenly.
Yes.
It's unreal. And then yesterday I had a little bit of work to finish up. I could barely get on the roof with a piece of metal. It was like, I literally was praying for my life. I was like, the guys down, the tradesmen that were working in the house were popping their heads out to see if I was still on there. It was crazy, man. And so, but what we see in nature is we see this wild generosity. Like when we plant stuff, I mean, we live on an acreage, we live on 5 acres, and the number of different types of trees, the stuff, the bush, the undergrowth, just the stuff that grows just naturally is mind-blowing. Like you cannot, it's only 5 acres. It's not a massive piece of land. I could not tell you how many different species we have. There's just this incredible display of generosity. It's just wild. But there's also laws that govern it to make it possible. And I think that this is the piece that guys like you and me, and I'm guessing probably 70% of the people we're talking to would struggle with this, is that the generosity piece you get, the taking a risk piece you get, but the laws that govern that to facilitate that and make it healthy throughout your lifespan, those are tough things to learn if they don't come supernaturally, or for some reason you're predisposed to not take those things seriously.
Yeah.
And I know in my own life, like if my cash flow is tight, I'm always going to pay payroll, because without my guys, like
payroll's number one.
You got to pay them. And then you have to pay your suppliers eventually, because, and it sucks not being up to date with suppliers. It's probably one of the things that I've hated the most, is in different seasons in my career for a variety of reasons. And in fairness, even people that manage the cash flow extremely well. I know one buddy of mine who we went through a downturn in the economy, and he was working in the sawmill industry, and he just about got eliminated through a lack of cash flow through one downturn. He was so close, and he had come from nothing. And I think it was pure fighting mentality that got him through. And he swore to himself. I remember having the conversation. He said, I will never be someone with a lack of cash flow ever again. He said, the next downturn, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to have the cash that I need to ride it out. And when other people are destroyed by it, he said, I'm going to take their business because someone's got to, and I'm going to use cash flow he's quite aggressive. But and it's not like he was looking to crush his competitors that way and take them out. He just knew that if you don't have cash flow, he knew from experience that all of a sudden you're just not able to operate.
Yeah.
When the downturn is there. And so I think that you take care of your employees, you have to. Big corporations, I think, get this better than small, is that they'll start to release people well before they're in crisis. Yeah, it looks cruel to us as small business people. We're like, wow, you don't care about your people. But actually, if you can't pay for your people, eventually everyone's got to go. So there is this survival mechanism that I think big corps, they just have a much better sense of than we do.
Yeah. So that's the downside of working for a big corporation.
It can be.
So
it can be. You want to, it's tricky. And I think that then you're trying to pay your suppliers. If you're ever delayed there, it sucks because you really need your suppliers in your corner. You really need the people that provide the material to be team members with you. And it's hard to have that team member mentality if you're not giving them what they need when they need it. So that's challenging. And then there's always the government. And for me personally, like, the government is the one that I'm least eager to pay.
Yeah, I think all of us are not eager to pay the government.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot that can be said around that. I don't want to get way into the weeds on that, but I think that the truth is, if you don't pay the government at a certain point, that becomes unbelievably stressful.
Yeah.
And it can shut you down if you let that extend too far. And I've seen people that that's happened to, and they're wonderful people and well-intentioned, and but it's a painful process because there's not a lot of grace there at a certain point.
But the ideal, and well, what should be the norm, is that all these people get paid on time anyways, which is something like, in full honesty, I don't think I've ever had a season, especially being a seasonal business in northern Canada, where our season is quite short, just a bit over half the year.
Yeah.
Like
eight-ish months.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a single winter where I've managed to stay on top of every single supplier,
right,
government remittance, everything.
Yeah.
Because again, this is an area where I don't put enough focus.
Yeah.
I don't steward this well.
Yeah. And it feels awkward, like really awkward, the amount of cash that we need to have sitting. And for you in particular, because you've still got admin staff.
Yeah.
You've still got people to carry through the winter when your revenue is close to zero.
Yeah.
And so the amount that you have to have in your war chest to handle that properly, it's way more than you really want to admit.
Yeah.
And that feels awkward for an entrepreneur who's like, okay, well, now we have this, we can do that.
Yeah.
Because you think about even just as simple as we're talking about tools, and it's like, you think about certain tools that make an unbelievable difference. Well, all of a sudden, if the cash is sitting in your account, you just want to do that.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with a young guy the other day who's doing extremely well. And he just wanted to make a really undisciplined purchase. He was talking to me about it, which was great. But he just wanted to make this undisciplined purchase just because he had the cash sitting. That always has been a fear of mine. I'm like, if I have too much cash sitting and all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, it's time for that yacht, let's go. And it's like, not that a yacht's what I would ever buy, but it's just like that kind of thing actually kind of freaks me out. And so I think that when you don't have healthy cash flow, well, you never have the fear of spending money on things that you shouldn't have, really, because the money's just not there. But I think overall, if I think about even how the stress affects my physical health, the stress of low cash flow affects my relationships with the people I love the most. And interestingly, it also affects how you react with your employees. Yeah. And I think that, when payroll comes around and you're really stressed, I think people sense that. I think there's a certain level of insecurity that people have around that, and that's not healthy.
Well, it also affects your freedoms on what you can do with your day to day.
Totally.
Like, for you, even more so than me, it's like, even if you have things that you really are passionate about, you want to do and prioritize.
Yeah.
If your cash flow is tight, you can't do that because you got to be on the tools.
Absolutely.
For me, even in so I've got an admin staff of 7 people.
Yes.
I should have the freedom to do whatever I feel like I need to work on.
Sure.
But for me, when cash flow is tight, and in all honesty, we're about to go into winter right now,
Yeah.
and I'm stressed about cash flow,
Sure.
like I am every single fall.
Yeah.
And I'm distracted instead of doing more stuff like this.
Yes.
And my proper CEO roles, I'm doing everything I can to generate revenue and contribute, strategizing through the cash flow crisis that we're about to go through, that we go through every single winter. And it's not what I should be doing.
Yeah.
But because cash flow is an issue, that's where my focus is.
It is. And I think about this even when it comes to the jobs that we take on. So if your cash flow is strong, you can legitimately take a look at the jobs that are coming across your desk. Every sales staff can, and be like, yeah, this is right for us. We're going to pursue this. This may be right for us. This is definitely wrong, and we're not even going to price it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we intuitively know what jobs we should be taking, but when your cash flow is really tight, you don't use that filter.
Yeah.
You literally just take what comes at times.
Yeah.
And sometimes and it can be a really negative spiral, because if you take the wrong job and you do it just because you have to have the cash flow, by golly, I've done it. You know, you've been with me. That's some of those jobs where like we should not be here. Like we literally should not be here. And yet here we are because of whatever meager cash flow this thing is going to give us.
Yeah.
It's not a good posture.
No, it's not where we should be. But you know, we've really emphasized the one side of things, like, because it's very relatable to us. But I have seen the other side of things too, where people are just so focused on the dollars and the stuff, building of bank accounts and stuff, that there is that negative swing that goes the other way too.
Yeah, and I think that if you have excess cash flow, because at a certain point you don't need that money in your account to run your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so at a certain point, then you have to take that money and invest it somewhere.
Yeah.
And put it to work for you somewhere other than your immediate business. And I think that in a disciplined person's and someone with a decent priorities in life, I think that can be done in a really healthy manner.
Yeah.
And I mean, and this is the one thing that I always say to small business people, that if you are not putting something aside in some way for your future, then nobody is going to do that for you. You know, when you're working for a large corp and you have a retirement package and stuff, it's a very different game.
Yeah.
And in a small company, I think, and this is a slight deviation, but this is a conversation that we're going to come back to in the future, because I feel like cash flow is a really big issue. And I think that what we've done is present an argument for the fact that it matters.
Yeah.
And that we haven't done it well. and that we're working through it. Like we're not like standing down, we're staring this thing in the eye, but it's something that we have taken many, many, many years to wrestle around. And so I think that we'll come back to it, but if you don't, as a small business person, start to invest, you're likely not going to have much. A lot of people will say, well, I'm going to sell my business at the end of my career, and that will then be my nest egg.
Yeah.
And I always caution people, because I'm like, well, if your business is saleable, then that's great. Just because you want to sell it doesn't mean you will sell it.
Yeah.
And so I always think that having some kind of investment as a small business person, regardless of whether you have a saleable business or not, is really prudent.
Yep. Having a proper exit strategy is a good idea, but you shouldn't just rest on that as your one nest egg.
Absolutely. There's a lot of unpredictabilities there. And so it's just a caution that I feel is worth mentioning. Yeah. That said, I think this has been a good conversation.
Yeah.
I think we'll carry on with it at some point in the future, maybe with some guests, and talk through people that have managed. What I'd like to do, and I think what we need to do, is talk with people who have managed the cash flow really well.
Yeah, we should get Chris on here.
Yeah,
he's
totally.
great at managing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I've got
another buddy. He's calling me out all the time for it.
and I've got another buddy who I've mentioned, not by name in this episode here. And I would really like to bring him on at some point if he's willing to just talk through how he manages it as well as he does, because I just think that there's some real secrets here that we need to uncover. So
yeah, well, let's do it. Sounds good.
Alrighty, thank you guys.